Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, Yushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about claims that are doing the rounds, not only in Australia but elsewhere in the white countries, or the once white countries, where mixed race relationships are now almost level pegging with relationships where people marry into their own diaspora or choose partners in their own diaspora. Now, this, of course, is an outrageous and grotesque untruth, but the various globalist controlled media outlets are pushing this hysterical propaganda and acting like it's a matter for huge celebration. So let's just have a closer look at this. Is mixed race relationships, in fact, a thing today? And if they are, surely we'd be noticing it. So when I saw this article about a week or so ago, and I was driving past and driving near an area that's sort of 85% non-white, I thought, well, here's going to be a place where these mixed race relationships are supposed to be happening. So I'll stop and I'll sit in a shopping centre. And of course, it's Christmas, summer holidays and New Year holidays in Australia, being in the Southern Hemisphere. I sat there and counted 500 couples to see just how many of that 500, this is like in a busy shopping centre, how many of the 500 are mixed race. So that's a pretty decent indicator of whether or not the propaganda holds up to scrutiny. I mean, we know in advance it doesn't. These are the same propaganda outlets that support mass migration, that say that all these economic illegal migrants are really fleeing, persecution and all that sort of nonsense. And also, want mass, all white people are Nazis. It's these sort of same sort of outlets. So we know in advance that they're going to be telling untruths and just fabricating all sorts of things. And this is no different. So now their claim is that 25% plus of all relationships are now mixed race. And when they do their subdividing by whether somebody's a trans or gay, lesbian or straight, or when they do the subdividing, they even manage to push that number higher, because gay or trans people, they're much more socially advanced and progressive, so they have either higher numbers again than so really it's a claim that straight white people are now picking in large numbers, selecting non-white, black or brown partners. So let's just have a look at that, and then I'll come back and sort of talk about this issue in a wider context. But so I sit in the shopping centre. I'm driving past, and I stopped and I did some shopping there that I would have done at another shop had I not thought to stop here. But out of 500 couples, as much as you can count being one person, someone behind me could have been a mixed race that I didn't see, but looking at 500 couples, only 3 were mixed race, and one looked more like an old white guy with a bit of money who's got his Asian hooker. But anyway, let's assume it's not. Let's just put that to one side and say so 3 out of 500. Now that's a far cry from 25%. If it was 25%, then you'd be looking at well over 100 couples would be mixed race. But this is not so. So there's no evidence of mixed race there. Now there's some possibility of mixed race that I may miss. For example, a Chinese Malaysian. For example, this is just a Chinese Malaysian having a relationship with a mainland Chinese person. So, you could argue, well, one's Malaysian, even though they're both ethnically Chinese, that's a mixed race. So those that, and I wouldn't pick that up at a distance. If I got up close, because I speak Pastel Mandarin, I could work out from the accent differences that maybe that was mixed race, but to look at it, you wouldn't. So there's no evidence at all that I see around me anywhere that it's even approaching 25%, and more likely less than 1%. But let's be generous and just round it out at 1%. And that would be the upper end. Let's even go beyond generosity and say it's 2%. That would be at the very outside. And where you do see mixed race, you see like the westernized. It's not someone who's come from a third world country yesterday. They may be second or third generation, say Chinese or something like that, and their family has reasonably well integrated into society. It's just not many of them, and so if you do see mixed race, it's more likely to come from those quarters. But then there's not many of them in the first place anyway. So let's go around the various ethnic groups. The Indians in particular, they have a very, very low rate, again 1% or less, very low rate of integration with people outside of their own genetic diaspora, and they want to keep it that way. Now, whenever there's the mixed race relationships is lower than they want it to be, the villains are always the white people, particularly straight white males. Those damn fucking Nazis. They just won't go into mixed race relationships. But they don't talk about the Indians not wanting to do mixed race relationships, or large sections of the Chinese population. The Philippines, there's a decent amount of some mixed race there, probably more than a lot of others. But outside of a few Filipinos, those sorts of things, it's not so. Now, if you take public transport, and I rarely do it, so I suppose it's I'm often when I do take public transport, I'm often either one of the very few or the only white person in, say, the train carriage. And it's obvious that even school kids, adults, but it's obvious they hang around in their ethnic group. You do see some outside of that, as in maybe a white sort of Australian person talking to a white Russian person. So you do see some of that, or a Pakistani talking to an Egyptian because they're both Islamic, and you do see a little bit of that, but not much. But even the school kids all talking with Australian accents, by the way. So they either came to Australia at a young age or were born here. You still have the Chinese group, the Indian group, the Pakistani group, the Filipino group, or the fucking Korean group, and so on. They just all hang around in their own diaspora. And again, this is where they've been socialized through the school system, where the teachers try and get them to sit in class. Try and get them to sit next to someone who's not from their own diaspora. So it's comprehensively failing, this idea of mixed race relationships. Even mixed race friendships are rare. Even those, even amongst high school kids, I doubt you'd even get to 5% in mixed race relationships, as in friendships. But in terms of intimate relationships or marriages, and with maybe an eye towards procreation, that sort of thing, it's 1-2% tops. And a lot of those, even in 2%, would be people like Filipinos. It wouldn't be the Chinese or the Indians. So the multicultural message that the propaganda that the West, the globalist control West, puts out, is that you can come to the West and keep everything about your heritage and culture completely and totally intact, including sending back to the village of your ancestors for brides, as a lot of the Muslim people do. Even the Christian Arabs, they do it, and of course the Indians. And so as long as you have that, you're really not going to have a very high rate of integration or mixed race relationships. So clearly this claim of 25% is utterly absurd, and it's just a propaganda play to get people to change minds and change attitudes and try and encourage mixed race relationships. But it's simply not happening. Again, even Indians who've been in generations still send back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides, as indeed to Pakistanis or Lebanese or Syrians. These sort of they all want to marry into their diaspora. Now I've noticed when they marry outside of there's an Iranian guy who he was born in Australia and he'd be, I don't know, mid-30s or something now, and he married out of all the people he could have picked, I can't understand why he picked this. He picked an angry, radical leftist primary school teacher to marry. And why he did that's beyond me. But this story goes the rounds in the amongst the Iranian community. They told the son not to marry outside of the Iranian diaspora, and they threatened him and did all sorts of things. Threatened him with excommunication and banishment. But he stayed with it, diaspora. And they threatened him and did all sorts of things. Threatened him with excommunication and banishment. But he stayed with it. God knows why. I think it's because he's very brown and very dark, and this woman was red-haired and freckled. I think it's the fascination of that look that sort of somehow drew him in. But I mean, for a white guy, this would be a terrible choice of a wife. And for someone like him, it was a disaster and proved to be. But this story's done the rounds amongst the Iranian diaspora about, well, that's proof. Never marry outside of your race, your own racial genetic group, because look what happens. And they rather missed the point that he just made a very bad choice. It wasn't the issue of just marrying outside of diaspora. That's not the cause. It was something other than that. But they're not looking at it that way. Their argument is, and we know the people fairly well, their argument is that any Iranian woman would know how to behave, whether she was a nutcase or this or that. She would know how to behave, and she wouldn't behave so shamefully and so destructively. And so if you marry inside your diaspora, then you're marrying people that know how to behave properly, and that's a good thing. So this is part of the folklore fables that go around within the Indian or Iranian in this case, or Lebanese. You marry outside of your diaspora, big mistakes, bad things happen, so just don't do it. And so there's very much this reinforced view that don't marry white people. It's just not, they just won't work out. Their values are different. Now, this comes back to multiculturalism, when you say, well, you can come up with your values, you can keep your value, keep your society, keep your social habit, keep your culture. Of course, that difference will remain. And these people are not being socialized through the school system at all. I struggle to see how 2 or 3 generations of going through the school system, the university, the whole sort of thing, and they're still not socialized into Western values. Now, today you can say, well, that's fine, because all universities and these places do is trash Western civilization and say that we're all Nazis and this, that, and the next thing, socialists and everybody's Hitler and so on. That if you come from another diaspora, another genetic lineage, you would look at, well, these Western people hate their own civilization, so why the fuck should we be part of it? Although we're happy to take the money, that will take, but the rest of it will leave behind. So the multiculturalism is creating a situation where integration rates are very low. And because the propaganda keeps going, well, it's white people's fault, it's white people's fault, it's only white people's fault, then the debate or discussion that could occur that may result in some possible integration down the track, that debate, that discussion, and those measures and those things are just not happening. So I don't see anytime soon, at least, that mixed race relationships will occur. Now, there are things that the government could do. They could stop this multiculturalism insanity and say, well, if you want to come to Australia, you come to be part of our society, our Christian society. Now, if you want to come here on a work permit, fine, not a problem. Come here, keep your culture, keep your religion, keep everything. But if you want to come to our country and live and be part of our society, then you must integrate. And if you're not prepared to, or don't want to, or think that that it's too much for you, then don't come. And that's, by the way, if you want to move to some of these third world countries that these folks come from, you have to jump through their hoops 100%. So those are things that could be done. You can't send away for brides and husbands from the home country. You've got to marry someone locally born. All these, even the Indians here, they are very reluctant for their sons and daughters to marry a locally born Indian. It does happen, but the preference, by far and away, the preference is to send back to India for husbands and brides, and keep the culture and the genetic purity there at 100%. So not being able to get husbands and brides from overseas, not being able to, if you come to our society, you have to be part of our culture. You can't be a dual citizen. Or these are things the government could do, and this may mean that the mass migration may be. Well, I don't want to go to that country if I can't practice my religion and live as I would in my own war-torn shithole country. Then so the migration rates may fall, but that's fine, because people that want to come under those circumstances want to commit themselves to the local society and the local culture, and fit into society and integrate and so on, and that's a good thing. So unless those sorts of measures and others like them are taken, I can't see there being much in the way of mixed race relationships at all. And this claim of 25%, what a bald-faced fucking lie. And I just can't see it anywhere around, and in areas where you think you would see it, such as that shopping centre that I sat in. But there you go. So this propaganda doing the rounds is nonsense. And not only that, I just don't see there's not will it not happen, or is unlikely to happen. There's no incentive for it to happen. Why the fuck would you marry outside of your culture? When you've got family pressures all around you and societal pressures within your diaspora and the enclave of diaspora, all these pressures saying don't do it. Of course, there's not going to be that. But that's something the government isn't addressing. They're just saying, well, it's all white Nazis that won't intermarry, without looking at all these other groups, the cultural groups and societal and genetic groups that are point blank refusing to engage in mixed race relationships. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.